Hey there, and welcome to Insights from Insight, where we understand minds and we support growth. I am Amanda Armstrong from Insight Education Academy. Today I have a quick question for you. When was the last time you sat down, truly sat down, with nothing to do, nowhere to be, and felt calm? Not just physically still, but mentally quiet. If you're like most of the moms I work with, you can't remember, because even when your body stops, your brain doesn't. Today I'm talking about why you're exhausted, even when you're technically doing everything right. And it's not the answer you think. It's not about sleep or boundaries or self-care routines. It's about what's happening inside your prefrontal cortex. Let's get into it. I want to start off this episode with a story, and this is about what happened to me, and I'm going to be honest about it because I think you'll recognize yourself in it. There have been a couple of turning point moments in my life, and the one that made me change my career trajectory and my parenting in general was sitting in my car in my school parking lot. It had been a long day that started with my youngest having a meltdown at 7 a.m. He didn't like his socks. They were bumpy. I remember it very clearly. It was a Friday and there weren't any more of his favorite socks left for him to wear to school that day. And by the time I finally got him and his brother out of the house and dropped off at school, I had already felt like I had lived a whole day, and it was only 7:45 in the morning. Obviously, I was going to barely make it to my school on time for the first bell. When I walked into the building and started walking towards my classroom, there were a bunch of students outside my door. There was one who was waiting for me to ask about an assignment, and then my class officers were there because there was a pep rally and they had all these supplies for the pep rally. And by the time the first bell rang, I was not ready for class at all. I spent the rest of the day running from one fire to the next. And when I finally got into the car around 4 o'clock that afternoon, I realized my lunch had been sitting on the passenger seat all day. I hadn't even noticed I had left it in the car because I never even got to eat lunch. I started crying immediately, thinking about having to go pick up my own kids, get dinner ready, and clean out the gross lunchbox. Obviously, I was going to have to do laundry because I needed more of his favorite socks, which obviously I was also going to have to go to the store at some point to get more of the socks that he would actually wear so that this type of morning wouldn't happen again. In that instant, it hit me. It wasn't the socks. Getting more socks and doing laundry was a good solution to the immediate problem, but if it wasn't the socks, it would just be something else. Every day was this chaotic mess, and I was starting to feel it not just in my worn out body, but in my soul. My kids were only in elementary school, and all I could think about was all the parents I met in my high school job during parent-teacher conferences who had been doing this for years. It was always the same. They were exhausted, they were frustrated, and they didn't know what more they could do for their kids. They were always apologizing for not doing enough, not checking their kids' grades more frequently, or missing the email I had sent. And at that moment, I realized that I was that parent, and I was looking at my future self in those meetings, and I just could not imagine doing this day for another 25 years. And that's when I realized that being the hot mess mom wasn't a funny meme or a silly skit on Saturday Night Live. I realized I was going to be miserable for the rest of my life if something did not change. I spent a lot of my time in school with students teaching executive function skills. I would help them organize their binders, create study plans, develop a time management strategy that will help them balance their college applications with their part-time jobs and with their swim team practice. And if those strategies worked for my students, why couldn't I use those same things in my own life? The brain function is the same, whether it's an exhausted mom or an overwhelmed junior in high school. In fact, my executive function skills should have been more advanced at that point since my prefrontal cortex was fully developed. So what the heck was the problem? I decided to take all that pedagogy and my understanding of the brain that I was using with my students and apply it to the adult parent life. So let me break down what's actually going on in our brains when we are hitting that breaking point and crying in our cars. And I promise to keep this accessible. No jargon, just the stuff that really matters. First is that prefrontal cortex. It is our command center. It is where the planning, the organizing, the decision making, and our emotional regulation all live. And the executive function is our RAM. It has a finite capacity. There is an overload, and that overload will come with some type of crash. And there's all this cognitive labor research. There was this study that was put out in 2019, which talked about mothers as household managers. And they link this household management job to emptiness and this development of resentment. This isn't about who does the dishes. It's about who thinks about the dishes. I've also touched on Daminger's 4 stages previously, but I do want to bring those up again. There's 4 stages to a task: the anticipation, identifying, deciding, and monitoring. And studies have shown that women carry the anticipating. That question of just tell me what to do puts all the cognitive labor on you, which leads to this decision fatigue. I've also discussed all of the research related to decision fatigue in the past. The idea that every decision depletes the same pool. And so by 5 p.m., your brain is running on fumes. And rest is just never going to help the problem. A long hot bath with a glass of wine or a vacation, those things don't fix the issue. You can't rest your way out of a system problem. And your brain doesn't stop running the background processes if you have an extra glass of wine at night. The process is still running. And obviously it's summer. So I was super excited about not having to run carpool and not having to sit in that line for a little while. But it turns out that summer is actually harder. It's not easier. There's a loss of structure. So school provided 7 hours of predictable scaffolding for you and the kids. The summer completely removes it. And now we are the structure. The parent who is home with the kids are the ones that are providing the structure. So it ends up creating more decisions. We have to decide, what do they do today? Who is watching them? What do they eat for lunch? Are they getting enough socialization? Are they watching too much TV? Are they playing too many video games? And every day is a blank page that we just have to fill. And everyone's home. More bodies in the house equals more executive function demands. I literally just said to my 10-year-old this morning, it doesn't even look like I cleaned this weekend, and I don't understand how that happened. And there's more snacks, more fights, more I'm bored. There's just more mess. And the expectation is that you're supposed to enjoy this, that you're supposed to be excited that your kids are home, that summer is supposed to be fun and family. And there's a guilt associated with not loving every minute. And that adds emotional weight on top of the cognitive weight you're already feeling. So what do we actually do? Is there anything we can do to kind of release this pressure and help us cope a little bit, especially in the summer? One piece of advice that I give you is that do a brain dump every night. Get everything out of your head. 3 minutes. Find a piece of paper or maybe pull up a phone note and just write all of the stuff that is being held in your brain so that you just don't have to hold it there. You can read it tomorrow. You can read it next week when you think about, oh yeah, I wrote down that thing, or oh yeah, I got the email about summer reading. What was the name of the book again? It's on paper so you don't have to hold that information in your head. And also work on transferring ownership, not just task. So giving your partner and your kids like categories, not just items. So it's not just go vacuum the living room. It's you're in charge of floors this entire week. I'm not going to feed the dog. You have to remember that you need to feed the dog every single day at 12 o'clock. I don't care how you figure it out, just make sure you do it. And it's not rotate the planning for meals every week. One person is in charge every single week. You can still go do all the grocery shopping for all those meals, and you can order the groceries, pick them up, however you do it, but you don't have to think about the planning. And lower the bar on purpose. Have lower expectations for yourself. Pick 3 shoulds and just drop them. See what happens. I'm gonna guess nothing bad happens. Think about all those shoulds. I should reorganize my closet. I should clean out the fridge. Just let it go and see what happens. Maybe write those things that you are just going to let go. Family whiteboard and say, y'all need to pick up these shoulds. I'm not doing them. Somebody else has to pick up the slack. Being communicative with your family can actually produce surprising results. There are times where I just say, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And somehow the things gets done because somebody else picks it up. Even my 13-year-old will sometimes do things that surprises me, but he is aware my cognitive load is full. His is not. I'm going to go do this thing for my mom. And it's really actually surprising to see if you let people take on task, they sometimes they will actually keep up with it. I'm not saying it's all the time, but sometimes they will surprise you. So if this information resonated with you, I do want to talk about something that goes a lot deeper. It's called the Burnout Blueprint. It's an 8-module course on executive function for parenting. And I'll link it in the show notes, but it is a program that I've created with a universal design of learning format that allows you to really get into the content and the curriculum. If you are sitting there this summer thinking about how exhausted you are, even though there's no school, this is the perfect course for you. So I encourage you to go ahead and go check it out. Next week, we're going to talk about reminding and how our reminders sometimes get louder and louder and they still don't help. And we'll talk about some strategies to help overcome that constant problem of having to remind everybody. And I do want to wish everyone out there a happy 4th of July this weekend. I hope you guys celebrate and have a great time with your families and friends. I'll see you next week.